Okay. Good afternoon. Today is March 22nd, 2024. My name is Sam Lee, and I'm here today with Miss Poornima Ajayan on behalf of the Houston Asian American Archive at Rice University. To begin with, could you please state your full name and where and when you were born?
Um, I'm Poornima, and my last name now is Ajayan. That's my husband's first name. Before marriage, I was Poornima Chandran. I was born in Calicut, India, in the southern state of Kerala, in 1967.
Perfect. And I guess to begin with, could you kind of generally describe the household that you grew up in, such as your siblings, what kind of neighborhood it was, what your parents did, and so forth?
So, we are a small nuclear family. I was born in Kerala, however, I think at a very young age, and I have no recollection when we moved to a different state. We moved to another southern state in called Karnataka. So I grew up in a city called Bangalore, which is now the Silicon Valley of India. So I have one sibling. She's younger to me. And my parents, my mother used to work for the central government of India. She worked as a senior scientific assistant for malaria eradication. Malaria was quite rampant in India at that time. And my father was in the armed forces. So growing up, um, you know, my first language, believe it or not, is English. It's not a different Indian language. And primarily that's because my father was in the army. And so a lot, the British have left. So there was a lot of influence from the British when they left. And being in the army, they used to go to the club. So my father was very insistent that we learn English first. So we spoke English at home. Um, we used to eat, Indians typically eat with their hands. We always ate with a fork and knife and everything. My father was very particular that we had to have table manners. We had to know where to put our hands, where to put the fork, how it has to be laid. Um, I recall very clearly going to school. My father was the one who used to take us to school, and he had a scooter, and he used to take us on the scooter to school. So he would iron our uniforms, and it would be perfect. I mean, when I say perfect, everyone in school, actually, I was well known for my style, the way I used to dress and carry my clothes, because it was all like military precision. My shoes were polished, and we had to polish our own shoes. My dad was very particular about that. So in the military, they polish it so that you can see your reflection in the shoe. And that's how we had to be. So when dad used to dress, like when we were dressed up to go to school, it used to be spick and span. We were, so well dressed, and that's how we grew up. But very early on in my life, I lost my dad. I lost my dad when I was 10 years old, and it came as a sudden, very sudden. My father was actually playing badminton, and we were vacationing in my grandmother's house in Kerala, and we got a call in the middle of the night, and we had to leave, rush to my father's side, and he had a heart attack. And while he was playing, he had a heart attack. And then I was going into fifth grade at that time, and I thought he would come back home, because I went, at that time, these are some of the things I clearly remember. I don't remember a lot of things. My memory is very, but I do remember that I was going, we had new uniforms in my school. So I went in my new uniform, showed it to my dad, and so get back to where we were. Yeah. I, yeah, we thought he would come back, but then, he had a stroke and then he passed away. So, that was hard. It was really hard because my mother was the sole breadwinner.
Mhm.
And, I was only 10 years old. And so I had to step in and take on a lot of responsibility, grow up, literally grew up before my time.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, it was not a hard life or anything like that, but it wasn't um, that easy either. It was just, middle class family. My mother, and, because I had to step in and take on, become a quasi adult, I had to take care of my sister.
Right.
Uh, but I was a very good student. And my mother never really had to worry about my studies or anything because I was always a topper at school. And then I went on. I finished my. In those days we used to finish 10th grade, and then we had the plus two that we had to do.
Mhm.
11th and 12th would be plus two. We would go to college, what they call college.
Mhm.
And so I went to college, and then I had a scholarship. So I went and, I did my entrance exams. I got into engineering. And so I ended up doing engineering. It wasn't really by choice or anything. It's just what everyone did, Either you become a doctor or an engineer.
Mhm.
And because I was good in math and everything, I figured that engineering would be more my calling than being a doctor. So I ended up doing my engineering, but um, during my engineering, actually slightly prior to that, I started modeling. And that was a very good source of income for me, because models are very highly paid, as you know, probably. So I didn't pursue it full time. It was just more like a part-time gig.
Mhm.
So it helped for a lot of things. I got my first scooter when with money that I got from modeling. And I was able to, you know, not travel a lot, but maybe a couple of places, when I used to, do ramp shows and TV and print. Um, then I also I was doing civil engineering. It was not by choice. It was something. Those days we used to, whatever rank you got, the computer would basically assign you to whichever college and whichever major, and we just had to stick with it. So I ended up getting civil engineering, and that's how I ended up doing civil engineering.
Mhm.
Then halfway through, I decided that I also wanted to get myself an interior design. They started an evening course where you could do interior design, and that was something that really piqued my interest. So I went and got a degree, a diploma in interior design. I used to go to evening school. Morning, I used to do engineering, and then evening school, I went and did interior design and got a diploma in that. And so when I graduated, I uh, started working with someone. I interned a couple of semesters, and then I started working with someone in an interior designing firm. And then after about 6 months or so, I started my own interior design firm and did a couple of projects as an interior designer. And then, I had a classic arranged marriage. And so I got married, and then we moved to Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my, at that time, husband to be or fiance was living in Japan when we
Uh,
engaged.
mhm.
And so, I met my husband, and then, so I stopped working as an interior designer and then moved to Japan. And then that starts a different phase of my life.
I guess then there are some questions I want to kind of backtrack a little bit on.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
I guess kind of firstly, just to clarify, so you were modeling and then you were in college and you were getting your night degree all at the same time?
Yes.
Wow. How was that experience for you? Did you, especially because I know you said engineering wasn't necessarily your calling, like it can be difficult studying something that you're not super passionate about. Um, like how did you kind of juggle all of that? I'm kind of curious.
Um, I think in retrospect, not too badly. At that time, I might have complained a lot, but um, I don't know. Honestly, I can't. really, it amazes me when I think about it, how I managed to do all three, but I
Mhm.
do have my degree. That's all I can say.
I know, I think I looked and it said you went to BMS, College of
College of
Engineering.
Engineering.
Was
Yes.
this kind of far from Calicut, I think you said, where you grew up? Did you have to kind of move away from home and like go to school, or were
No,
you?
no, 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 no. It was actually very close to home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I lived in the same, I mean, we lived in the same city. So, and it was very close to home, maybe a couple of miles or so.
So would you say you were still very much involved with like your household responsibilities at the same time on top of,
Okay.
all of college life?
Okay. When you say household responsibilities, it was a very different time. We did not have to do anything much at home.
Really?
And yes, because we have help for everything. We
Mm.
had live-in maids, so they would take care of everything, you know. So literally, housework is not something I grew up doing.
Mhm.
It's not something I enjoyed, or not something I did at all. So, you know, when the way India was, it's, you know, when you're a student, you just focus on your studies
Right.
and that's it. You don't have to take care of anything. You don't have to wash your clothes. You don't have to do laundry. You don't have to, um, keep the house clean. There's somebody for all that.
Mhm.
You just focus on other things.
I guess I was thinking more like your sister, because I remember you said you felt like you had to mature quickly. You had a lot of, so I guess I was thinking more in that sense. But this is also,
Well, my sister also, by that time, by the time I went to college and all that, she was her own person. She
Mhm.
had her own, she was also almost, 18, 16 or so. When I went to college, she was 16. So she was pretty grown up and didn't need much of anything, any taking care of or anything, just maybe some advice and, sisterly help that I gave. Other than that, she was also quite independent. In
Okay.
fact, she probably helped out more with household chores than I did, to be
Um,
honest.
I guess like you mentioned like how your father left a lot of impact on you in terms of,
Yes,
presentable, being very disciplined.
yes.
I guess maybe a little bit more about your mother. Are there any values that she kind of contributed to your upbringing?
So my mother is this steel, rock solid. So when I look at her, I think of her as, somebody who, against all odds, right? I mean, you have to understand, in India, being a widow, especially at that age, it's really hard bringing up two young girls single-handedly. Um, it creates a lot of flack. It used to, people will say, talk crap. They'll just, single woman, and she was a very good-looking woman, my mother. So there was a lot of unnecessary, um, attention drawn to my family. So my mother was able to, not waver in that, make sure that we stayed where we were. There was a lot of pressure on her to move to closer to her siblings in Kerala. And she said, no, she will not. She will only stay here because she wants her children to get a better education. And so that was a huge, so I've seen her go through all that. So she's been, great source of inspiration that way. And also, she's very open individual, like open to change. She's not, even today, when I tell her that this is better for you to do so, she'll adapt immediately. And she's 82 years old.
Mhm.
It's not easy. As you get older, you get set in your ways, and it's very hard to change, right? My mother, so that's one thing that my mother is so good about doing. She's great about adapting. And I think that's one thing that I've learned from her, is adapting. And also, she also took very good care of herself.
Mhm.
So, I think I value that too, because if you don't take care of yourself,
Right.
then you can't take care of others around you, believe it or not, self-care is very important.
Yeah.
And for me, it's very, very important.
I guess kind of following up, in addition to the values from your parents, was your family involved with any spiritual or religious beliefs when you were growing up? Did you celebrate any specific traditions or holidays? Maybe not even religious, but like Indian culture in general.
Actually, because I lived in a different state from my home state,
Mm,
um, we did not. Celebrated Christmas because at school, it was run by an Anglo-Indian community. So
mm,
we celebrated Christmas. We went to the club and we did New Year's Eve. We went dancing on New Year's Eve. So most of what we celebrated were like sort of the English Christmas and New Year's Eve.
mm.
Um, my family did not. I mean, we are religious for the sake, I mean, yes and no. I mean, going to the temple or something was not, something that we did uh, on a daily basis, or not something we did monthly or weekly or anything like that. But if you ask me, do we believe in God? Yes, my mother now does her prayers and things like that. But it growing up, it was not a big part of our lives. No, it wasn't. It
Okay.
was just there in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
We were not atheist. We were
Mhm.
not agnostic. We had uh, it was never a question, it's there, but it's somewhere in the background.
Okay. I see. So
Yeah.
it's like just not really a central part of your life, but it still
No.
exists.
Yeah, definitely not a central part of our lives, especially not my family.
Right.
And yeah, we didn't, other than the Christmas and New Year's Eve, we didn't celebrate any of our indigenous holidays. And we
Mhm.
lived in a different state, so part of we didn't feel that we could celebrate the holidays of that state, even though
Mhm.
we could have, but we didn't.
Yeah.
But we enjoyed participating in them, not doing it in our house, but participating in them. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, then I think we can kind of jump towards, continuing this story. I guess my last question is kind of more about arranged marriage. I know you said it was very much a norm, but how did you feel, at your age, being in that sort of situation? And
So I personally wanted an arranged marriage.
okay.
I had, grew up with, I went to an engineering school, a lot of friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, everything. And I just knew that given our society, it was a lot easier to have an arranged marriage because you could not say, I'm going to fall in love with someone from my community, my caste, and everything. And the divide between the North and South is pretty large. We come from matrilineal family, which means, the women carry the line. And I come from an all-woman household. Three of us are all women. I lost my dad, like I told you. So women were very strong in my family. So adjusting to what is a deeply patriarchal society for me would have been a nightmare. I did not want to add a complication and have a failed marriage.
Mhm.
Because I mean, for me at that time, I felt like that was guaranteed if I went in because you have no control over who you fall in love with, right? I cannot say, okay, here's this community, this caste, and then I'll fall in love. No, you fall in love with whoever, right? And so I was very sure, and I told my mother to go and find somebody so that all the work is done for me.
Mhm.
I just come in and say yes or no.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you said yes,
Yes.
and you ended up going to Japan. Do you want to kind of continue kind of your journey of, where life took you?
Yes. So, yeah, we got married and then we had a short engagement. So he came and saw me December 25th. January 1st, we got engaged. And then he went back to Japan on January 6th. And then we kept in touch by, classic snail mail. He wrote letters. He sent me cards. He wrote poems for me. And then, during that process, we decided, I mean, initially it was supposed to be a 6 month to 1 year engagement. But then I think as we talked to each other and wrote to each other, we realized that we wanted to get married earlier. So he, said he'd come in April. And so we got married on April 29th.
Wow.
And then as soon as we got married, I was able to get my visa to go to Japan. And then I moved, left everything and moved to Japan. And trust me when I tell you, I was like Alice in Wonderland. My first country abroad, and that to a developed country like Japan. Everything was just beautiful. I mean, I loved living in Japan. I loved coming from chaotic India to an ordinary, everything is so structured, is so beautiful. Everything's on time. I could, my watch could be after the buses, everything ran on time. The taxi drivers, the regular taxi drivers drove with gloves and everything. They looked like
Wow. Mhm.
chauffeurs, limousine. It was such a beautiful time, I embraced everything. And then I interviewed at a company to teach English.
Mm.
And because I did not have a very strong Indian accent to
Mhm.
my English was more like a British accent.
Right.
They hired me to teach English to Japanese employees.
Mm.
So I worked for a company called Active Language Association
Mhm.
that was based out of Tokyo, but we lived in Tsukuba.
Mhm.
And I was working for Active Language Association as an English instructor to company employees. So I used to do that evenings. I used to go and teach English. Then I had some women who would come to my house and I would, have conversational English with them. Then every weekend we traveled somewhere. I have traveled extensively in Japan. Every weekend we'd go to Tokyo and we would try out, we would get the newspapers those days, the newspaper that we read. And every Sunday there would be a write-up about a different restaurant,
Mm.
different cuisines, international. And
Yeah.
we cut that out. And then we would go and try and visit that restaurant if it had good reviews and everything. So I tried my first introduction to international cuisine was in Japan. We would go to
Um,
Tokyo and every weekend, take the train, go there, explore Tokyo,
mm.
at a different restaurant and come back home.
So this is
It
the
was it
beginning
was a great time.
of
Yeah,
your
great time.
travel.
Great time. So that was so I lived there for about 11 months.
Wow. I
Yeah.
guess so were you pretty good at Japanese as well then, or at least picked up bits of the language?
Yeah, so I learned hiragana and katakana,
Mhm.
how to read and write hiragana and katakana, but
Mhm.
kanji was a lot more difficult.
Right.
Um, so I just knew basic phrases. My
Mhm.
husband, Ajayan, was very good.
Mhm.
So I guess, you know, he took over the reins, and since he knew, somehow, my learning did not take off as I expected.
Mhm.
It took a back seat because there was already somebody who knew. And so I
Right.
just learned, just moshi moshi, squishy dake, just a little
Right.
bit. Yes,
Because I think I looked at your form and you seem to know a lot of languages. I think
yes,
it says like I remember French being on there.
yes,
So did you learn all of these like as you because like I guess in India you said you spoke like English primarily and then
yes.
where did all of your other language acquisition come from?
So when I was in India, I learned English, and then the state I lived in, the language was Kannada. So I learned, obviously, that was my third language.
Hmm.
And then Hindi was my second language, which is widely spoken in India.
Right.
And then my mother tongue is Malayalam. So obviously, I spoke Malayalam to the maids and to the house help.
Hmm.
So I'd learned that. And then one of my neighbors spoke Telugu, so I learned, I can understand that very well. And
Hmm.
then, when TV was first introduced, it used to be another language, Tamil. So I learned that too, because, and again, just by hearing, I learned it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
You
those
must be
Indian
very
language,
gifted.
I think I have a certain, year for languages, maybe, better than others. And the thing is, I have no shame. I
Yeah.
think that's the difference, my kids, if I ask them to say something, they're so inhibited, they won't say it. I
Mhm.
have no inhibition. I'll just say it.
Okay,
And
yeah.
that helps. That helps.
Yeah, I mean, you are, I guess the term would be polyglot. I think that's what they called
I
you.
don't know if I can call myself a polyglot. Polyglot is more than 10 languages, right?
Oh, I thought it was five.
Is it five?
I mean, I could look this up, but I know there's just different terms, right? And you definitely fall in one of the top, like, because I know everyone in Europe, for example, like if you grow up in Europe, you know at least like three languages.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I found it very impressive while looking through. I was like, wow, she knows so many languages. I guess Japanese you're even familiar with, even if you're not like, fluent, but
Yeah, I'm not fluent, but I have to go back there now, and and now I'm much more open too than I was back then, growing back up. I mean, like I said, the Indian culture is so, you I don't want to say suppress, but kind of you suppress a lot. So you don't want to take that bold step, but now I'm different.
right.
America just brought out
Yeah.
a part of that's
I guess,
yeah. I change every day. I learn every day. So
yeah, I mean, I think being abroad always puts you in those spaces where if you aren't able to really speak up for yourself, really get out there, then you will face a lot of challenge. So, I guess all this
right.
traveling really brings that out of you.
Yes, it has certainly shaped who I am today.
I guess I interrupted, you did 11 months in Japan. Let's continue the story. What happened next? What was your next step?
Okay, so Ajayan, we could have stayed on in Japan, but
Mhm.
Ajayan is a traveler. He
Mhm.
cannot stay still. So actually, he completed his PhD in the US. He went to Northwestern,
Oh, wow.
and then he moved. But instead of finding a job in the US, he took up this job in Japan. So he was working for NEC, and we had a
NEC.
pretty comfortable NEC. NEC?
What is, what
On
type of
Denki. I think it's Nippon Electric Corporation, I think it was
Oh,
called.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then we were very comfortable. We could have continued to stay there, but then he was like, okay, I need to move on. He got this offer of being a postdoc in
Mhm.
France.
Wow.
And so we decided, okay, let's go to France. So we gave up all our comfort in Japan to be a postdoc. You know what the salary of a postdoc is. He had a very good salary in Japan, and then we literally moved down in terms of comfort to be almost almost just a tad better than students.
Yeah.
And so but we wanted to move. We the opportunity to move to France and Paris was so we said, okay, let's do it. So we went to Paris. And he was a postdoc there. So for the next 2 years, we spent in France, in Paris. He was a postdoc, and then while I was there, I started off by going to the mairie. I don't know how you would call the mairie. It's like a town hall or something like that, where
Mhm.
they would teach. I knew no French, and those days there was no spoken English anywhere in France, in Paris where we lived. So you had to know French,
Right.
and not both of us didn't speak it.
Oh,
And he didn't require it, at work, because everything is done in English.
right.
But for me to go to the market and to do my groceries, to go to the bakery,
Mhm.
I needed to do it. And so I started going for classes to the city center or town hall or
Mhm.
whatever, and started picking it up slowly. Then um, yeah, I remember clearly one incident where I went to get some chicken,
Mhm.
and I used to buy rabbit because I
Mhm.
couldn't speak French. So I bought rabbit. I was making I was making Indian food with rabbit.
Mhm.
We enjoyed it for a very long time until I finally realized that what I was eating was rabbit and not chicken because I couldn't communicate to them
Uh-huh.
that I
Oh
wanted
my.
chicken. So, those are the mishaps of not knowing the language. But then I learned it. And then I also went for a little bit of time. There were some free classes offered in Sorbonne. I went there. And then I went and got a business diploma in Institut Catholique in French. And so what that does is that if you have a degree or something, this kind of enhances your degree. So I did that. And while I was studying in Paris, I got pregnant with my first child.
Mhm.
And I had my first child in Paris.
Mhm.
And then as soon as we had her, within a month or two, we moved to Germany.
Oh,
We,
okay.
yeah, yeah. So my husband got another postdoc in the Max Planck Institute, which is a very well-known institute. So we moved to Germany.
Wow.
And yes, and then we lived for a year and a half in Germany.
Mhm. Which
And
part?
yeah, I'm sorry, in Stuttgart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And while we were under the Max Planck Institute, they used to offer us some classes.
Mhm.
I could take classes at the Goethe Institute and so I started learning German. I used to go for evening classes while Jane used to take care of the baby. And because I was the only one who could drive,
Mhm.
he only learned driving in the US and which was automatic. And I was the only one who could drive stick shift because I learned my driving in India.
Yeah.
So um, I was the only one who could drive in Europe. And I remember it was so hard to get a driving license.
Really.
In France, I failed 3 times.
Wow. Was it
3 times I failed.
was it like just the standards and expectations were too high, or like the system was just too
Yes,
difficult?
they would fail you at the drop of a hat. You had to parallel park. And if you made the slightest mistake, if you came to the stop sign, if you didn't stop there for the required amount of time, they could fail you. If you didn't put on
Wow.
your indicator, showing that you wanted to turn left and
Yeah.
in that moment you're sometimes very nervous and
Mhm.
knowing that it's so hard it makes you extra nervous. So I failed it 3 times, but I got the license when I went to Germany quite
Mhm.
easily. I mean, better than France. So after that, we had a car and I could drive.
Wow.
Um, I had a little baby with me at that
Mhm.
time. But anyway, so I was able to learn some German.
Mhm.
I went up to mid level, like not the beginners, but medium middle level German.
Mhm.
And then Ajay got this opportunity as a professor, and that was like he wanted me also to have an opportunity to live in the U.S. to see what life was,
Mhm.
you know, just to experience life in the U.S. So he
Right.
got this opportunity he interviewed to be a professor, and he got offered a position in Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Albany, New York.
Mhm.
And so he accepted it. And then we moved from Germany after a year and a half to Albany, New York. And, we lived there for about 10 years.
Wow. I
And
guess, across all the different places you lived in, what were some of the greatest challenges you kind of faced? I know we kind of touched on like language barrier as one. And then I guess you only had one child by the time you made it to the US, correct? So
yes.
what was it like, caring for such a young baby as you're, balancing moving around? I know you said being a postdoc obviously doesn't give you the same level of comfort and ease that you might when you're just a single couple, like, living in Japan, like being able to explore every weekend. So how did you kind of balance all of that?
Well, to be honest, even though we had only a student salary, almost a postdoc salary, we traveled. We still traveled every opportunity. So there was this place in Châtelet-les-Halles. I remember there's this place called Châtelet-les-Halles in Paris.
Mhm.
There was a étudiant, like a student. So there were these tours that students could take.
Mhm.
So we've traveled to Italy, Portugal,
Wow.
Spain, Switzerland, all of that, and all over France,
Mhm.
all with our postdoc salary. We did everything. Um, of course, there were no savings. We had zero savings, but that was not a concern at all. We never thought about saving for anything,
Mhm.
because, I think savings are a big thing in the US, especially because, education is not free here.
Right.
But in Europe, education is free.
Mhm.
So, and you get top class education, college education.
Right.
And then, when you get older, also your health, there's no social security or that you have to worry about.
Mhm.
So, nobody thinks about saving. I think the biggest issue was like me, having really small spaces. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me was not having the comfort level that I had in Japan. I
Mhm.
did not have that, and we were robbed once in Paris. Yeah, my apartment was robbed, and I lost everything. They took all my jewelry and everything.
Mhm.
But that was kind of really, hard to come get over.
Mhm.
And so that was the biggest challenge for me. And then, of course, learning the language. And then when we came to Germany from France, uh, it was a different dynamic, right? Different culture, different set of people. So adapting to that, it took a little bit of time. And also the apartment that we had in Germany, I remember the Max Planck used to put us up in this, it was called Horst Seidel House. It was it was so old and it was so bad. It was so bad. I remember that. Other than that, I think everything else was just fine. It was, for me, it's a challenge. I love moving. Unlike most people, I love the challenge of finding new things. For me, it's joy, like trying to find a new grocery store, trying to find new ways to get to somewhere.
Mhm.
It's all a challenge. It's something that I absolutely love doing.
Wow.
No, I'm an anomaly and I'm weird, but that's that keeps that's my adrenaline
It
rush.
it's it's perfect that you met, your husband who also loves travel. It's like,
Oh my God, between the two of us, I mean, he's actually much more of the travel freak.
really?
Yes, even when we are sitting in one country, he will say, okay, so while we're traveling there on the plane, he will ask me, what are my 5 bucket list destinations or top 10 bucket list destinations? While we're coming back, he'll ask me the same question. And while we're there, we'll be researching where else we need to go. He's crazy about traveling.
Wow. Wow. Then I guess let's talk a little bit about the US, coming here. You were in, Albany, New York. You grew up speaking English and your
Right.
husband had already been in the US before, so I'm guessing it
Right.
wasn't as difficult of a transition for you guys.
No.
But I guess, how was it, coming to Albany, finding, a community? Would you say there was like an Indian American community that you felt like you identified with, or would you say like, from all that traveling, you didn't feel as strongly or close to, finding a specific Indian American community?
Um, So, I mean, obviously moving to the US is a lot easier because everything is big, is available. The biggest challenge I had was getting used to the cold. It
Mhm.
snowed a lot, so winters were hard with kids.
Right.
Uh, getting them in and out of clothes, and then you go to a mall or someplace, it's again too hot that you have to take everything off and then put everything back on. So that's for me was the biggest challenge is about how the disparity between inside outside is just too much. Even now
Mhm.
I always feel like even when at work rice or something, I feel like we waste so much energy in this country, so much. We are extremely wasteful as a country, I feel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but how I feel. Even when I go to the restrooms, I see the way people use paper. It
Uh-huh.
just it it literally grates on me. I
Yeah.
cannot, even to date, I cannot come to terms with that. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, it was. Did we ultimately ended up getting a nice Indian community that we were a part of. I made a lot of friends, but it takes time, whether it's Indians or anybody else. And yes, I obviously I do resonate more with Indians. Even here, I have a very strong Indian girl gang friend, and we have a lot of things that we talk about. And the upbringing, even though not entirely accurate, but there are a lot of things that are similar, right? So obviously you feel much more comfortable with them. So yes, I did end up making a strong community. We used to, we missed Indian food, good Indian food. Oh, that's one thing we really missed in Europe at that time. In the good Indian food was very hard to come by. Getting
Yeah.
Indian groceries was a little harder to do. So, yes, those are the things that we really missed. And because at home we still cook Indian food,
Mm,
um, that, coming here, everything being available was a pleasant surprise.
mm,
And having such, for me, luxury apartments, it was coming from Europe.
right.
Then you easily get used to that much luxury, and then you want better and better and better. You just keep going up and up. But coming from Europe, that was a pleasant surprise.
Hmm.
Uh, but the fact that we had to drive everywhere, that really
Yeah.
got to me. I'd much rather get on a metro and go somewhere.
There is no public transportation.
No, yeah, that was hard, having to
Yeah.
drive everywhere and having to do a lot of, like, bigger spaces. If you have a bigger house, you have to clean it.
Hmm.
So that was, it was not like having a small space.
Right. I guess because you said kind of earlier, like growing up in India, you didn't have to worry so much about household chores. I'm guessing that wasn't the same once you came here.
Yeah, the minute I moved to Japan, I had to do everything myself, right? From
Mhm.
cooking, cleaning, and everything. Yes.
Right.
And here also, I mean, but now I think there's a culture where you do get help here. It's a
Mm.
lot different. But
Right.
initially, just about everybody did their own housework,
Hmm.
cooking and everything. So yeah, had to just get adjusted to that.
Yeah. So I guess kind of moving on to this chapter of being in Albany for 10 years. I know you
Mhm.
said your husband was, working as a professor.
Mhm.
Um, I think you said you got an MBA, or I think I read somewhere you got it. So that was here, I'm guessing.
Yes, Albany. So I had my older one with me,
Hmm.
and then I decided that, while she goes to daycare or whatever to, for her social activities, I needed to put her in some kind of situation where she would be with other kids because she
Right.
was my first one and I didn't have any siblings. So at that time, I wanted to go and I did my GMAT, and being a professor's wife, I do get the benefit of getting, tuition benefits, right?
Hmm.
So I was a part-time, I did my MBA part-time. Um,
And did you do an MBA with like a goal in mind, or did you just feel like you needed an extra degree?
I feel like I needed an extra degree to, see where my future is, because all this time I was working, but only like small jobs here and there. It wasn't
Right.
any, so I thought that having an MBA and especially studying here, so I
Hmm.
had already gotten a degree, basic undergraduate engineering degree, and so I wanted to see what would enhance my career moves, and
Hmm.
it seemed like an MBA would be the best bet.
Right.
And so, with the idea of going out to work at some point, I figured that an MBA would be the best.
Like after getting your MBA, did you start looking for jobs or opportunities? I know you said you did Mile Mari earlier, so maybe you can talk briefly about that. But yeah, go ahead.
So after I mean, during my MBA, I interned. So we are given internship opportunities and stuff. So I interned at GE.
Mhm.
General Electric. And then when I finished my internship, they offered me a job. So
Mhm.
I started working with GE as soon as I graduated.
Mhm.
So I worked with GE for a little bit of time, and that's when about a year or so, and then I got pregnant with my second child.
Mhm.
And so when I had my second child, um, Ajayan had his first sabbatical.
Mhm.
As a professor, you get every 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years, depending on the university you
Mhm.
get. So he had his first sabbatical. And when he got his first sabbatical, as you know, we love to travel. So my daughter was 1 month old,
Mhm.
and we moved to France again, to Strasbourg this time.
Wow.
So I just gave up everything, and then we moved to France. So I took a leave of absence from work,
Mhm.
and then we moved to France. We were in, and so I took my older daughter, I put her in school in France, in Strasbourg. We lived there for 6 months, and
Mhm.
then because my second daughter was about 6 or 7 months, I spent um, some time in India, about 6 months in India,
Wow.
so that that my children would have that opportunity to be exposed to Indian culture with their grandparents, spend some time and everything before we moved back to the US again.
Mhm.
We came back, and then I started working again for GE. And also, meanwhile, I was sitting around, before I got a job, I didn't know what I should do. So that's when I started my Almari, I was talking to my friends and everything, and we decided that this would be a good way to, because all of us were stay-at-home moms, but
Mhm.
looking for something meaningful to do.
Yeah.
And that's how my Almari was born. And we um, started doing gently recycled clothes
Mhm. That's
for
cool.
gently recycled Indian clothes.
Mhm.
Yeah, Indian market. Yeah.
Wow. So it must have been kind of like a homecoming in a sense in terms of like culture and being able
That's
to
right.
apply your skills. Um, yeah, then I guess is that like pretty much the majority of your time in Albany? Is there anything else that, you felt was kind of significant in your experiences during your time there?
No, I had a very good Indian community, and we used to, do a lot of events. And because it was a small community, everybody knew everybody else. There was a temple, small temple that was there. We would meet there. We would, do the regular dances and, all the community events that
Mhm.
we would participate in. So, there was a lot of dancing. There was a lot of, fun activities like that. But because it was a small community, it was really very nice. And, um, we were close enough to New York so that we could take trips to New York. It was beautiful because of the seasons that we used to have, the fall, spring, mountainous, and we were close to Canada. We could go up to Montreal sometimes,
Mhm.
drive up there. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. Then after some time, it just started to get so cold, and Ajay started, when he got this opportunity at Rice, it was a no-brainer really to move down south.
So he works at Rice currently.
Yes, he's a professor at Rice.
Oh, okay. I didn't connect the dots there, but now it
Yes.
makes
Yeah.
sense. So, okay, then let's talk about Houston. So you picked up again and you moved all the way to Houston.
hmm
Houston and Albany are very different places, even within the same country. So kind of how was that transition for you?
I mean, it was finally, I felt like, Albany was a small town.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm a city girl. So I really felt like, okay, I can live. I
Mm-hmm.
can, I see restaurants, I see multicultural restaurants,
Right.
cuisines from different parts of the world that and we live in Midtown. So there's
Oh,
people around.
right.
I'm not a big house, big yard kind of girl. I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather have the small house, small, but with people living all around me. I want to see people. I
Yeah.
feel alive when I see people. And the
Mhm.
fact that, this place is a lot more sun just automatically lifts my spirits. I
Yeah.
think, also at the stage of our lives, I think when we're much older, you really crave the sun. It just definitely puts you in a better spirit right away. Just seeing sunlight puts you
Mhm.
in a better spirit than having dull gray skies.
Yeah.
So, and then coming to a big city, of course, all the access that we have is great. I mean, was so happy to move here. So happy. The only challenge was trying to get the kids in good schools,
Mm.
where we lived and everything. And that was a big challenge, trying to find schools to put the kids into.
Yeah.
Uh, Older one went to a private school because the school that we were zoned to was not great. So, that was the only thing I think the adjustment was sending a child to private. But my older one did go to private school even in Albany. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
How are your children all grown up now?
Oh, yeah. My older one is doing her PhD in neuroscience in USC.
Oh.
And
Mhm.
my younger one, as I told you, is a sophomore at Rice.
Right, right.
Yeah, they're both
I'm
adults.
Yeah. So I guess kind of coming to Houston, did you intend to work at Rice as well, or is that something you just picked up later?
Okay, so when I came here, I started working again. I went back to GE. My
Mhm.
old boss called me because they needed a transfer. So I was doing transfer pricing for GE. So
Mhm.
with an MBA in finance, I started doing transfer pricing for GE. And I had a great relationship with my boss. And so when the opportunity in Houston came by, he called me. There was GE Power Systems here, GE Aero Derivatives in Houston. And so he said that they needed a transfer pricing person. And so he reached out to me and I took it up gladly because, at that time I was looking for something meaningful, waiting for it to happen.
Mhm.
My Almari had just, I sort of, it had come to a standstill.
Mhm.
And so I went back to work with GE as a transfer pricing analyst again. And I worked for them for some time. And then Ajayan's first sabbatical at Rice came uh,
Mhm.
in 2013.
Mhm.
So then we took the sabbatical
Mhm.
and we went to India. We moved to India for one. So my younger daughter is a musician.
Mhm.
She's a performing musician. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and she got accepted by a senior musician as a student. And so we moved for 1 year and then we continued to live there for 2 years.
Oh,
While
wow.
she went to school there. She took, and my older daughter just got into Rice.
Mhm.
So we situated her at Rice and then she and I, my younger one and I moved to India for 2 years. And
Uh,
then after I came back from India, then I looked for opportunities at Rice, and then I interviewed in the dean's office,
mhm.
School of Engineering, and that was my first job at Rice. And
How
I've been at Rice since then.
how was it kind of living split? I guess your husband was working as a professor here while your oldest was attending school here, and then the other two were like, 2 years is kind of a long time.
But
So how
but
was
it's
that?
not like the complete long a time that my husband because he was on a sabbatical, so he was in India for the first year. He was there a lot,
Is a
and
sabbatical 6 months or a
6
year?
months to a year.
Okay.
You can take but he would keep coming and going.
I
At least
see.
he was there once a month or once in
Mm,
2 months at the most. Uh,
okay.
and then a couple of times we came here.
Hmm.
And then my older daughter also, a vacation, she came to
Hmm.
India.
Okay.
So that's how we made it work.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Because yeah,
no,
I guess split family dynamics are difficult to handle.
no, but
Especially.
my husband travels, he traveled all the time. So it didn't feel that.
Uh,
And, I mean, I had my younger one with me and he had the older one here. So
uh,
it was a little bit better than two people being in two different places, right?
Right, right.
We had some part of the family each of us had,
Mhm.
and that really helped. And it was a sacrifice that I made for my younger one
Mhm.
to further her musical career. Yeah,
Wow.
felt that that would be important for her career.
Yeah. Um, so then, yeah, I guess coming back to rice, you're now, working. So it's a
Yeah.
very rice family, I guess.
Yes, we're now family.
So yeah, can you kind of share more about like your experiences working for rice, like what specifically you do and so forth?
Yeah, so I started off in the School of Engineering. I used to do budget and finance for the School of
Mhm.
Engineering in the dean's office. That's how I started off. I used to work for Bart Sinclair. I absolutely love the culture at Rice, and that's why I have never looked outside of Rice after that.
Mhm.
2016, I started, and it's now 2024. I've
Right.
never held any job for this long. Just you can see that in my career, but Rice has
Right.
been because it has been so good to me.
Mhm.
It's I love that it's not like working for the emergency room, right? Everything they people are very nice. People you're appreciated for what you do, but you're not hounded on all the time. Um, it's a great work culture. And currently, so I worked in the dean's office for the School of Engineering as a finance and budget analyst for many years.
Mhm.
And then last year, I mean, we had another sabbatical
Mhm.
in 2022 to
Mhm.
23, we had a sabbatical. So we
Wow.
took the sabbatical. I took a leave of absence from Rice, and then we lived in UK, Germany,
Wow.
India, Singapore. Um,
Singapore.
yes.
That's kind of far compared to some of the other ones. What was your reasoning for that?
Well, because we like Singapore when we traveled there, and Jane had an opportunity to work there for a bit.
Mhm.
So we wanted to, and my younger daughter loves Singapore. So we thought, why not give it a shot and spend some extended period of time there to see what it's like? And
Yeah.
so we did that for some time, about a
Mhm.
month, a little more than a month. We lived in Singapore
Mhm.
during, I mean, this sabbatical gives us the opportunity to do slow travel, right?
Right.
Live in a place and work there, see what it's like, rather than traveling there for as a tourist.
Right. Right.
So that was in 2022, 23 we came back.
Mhm.
No, 22 we came back. 21 to 22 is when we took the sabbatical, just at the end of COVID. So
Right.
we just started traveling then, and it was great. I mean, and then I came back and I started working, and I was working for the little bit in the global office and doing international student related stuff at the dean's
Mhm.
office. And then in November, this opportunity in the Office of Research opened up as a program manager.
Mhm.
And I moved here because the position at the dean's for the global position was ending in the dean's office, and they suggested that I apply for this position. And I'm been here since November.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess then I kind of want to shift the focus to some of your travels. I know you have like your social media platform. Can you kind of tell me how that all started and what that experience has been like for you?
So it all started during COVID
Hmm.
when we had, a lot of time and time to cook, time to do that. So I started posting. I mean, I think I started before that, but probably not posting as much. I never took it up seriously. So, but then during COVID, I started posting a lot more and trying to figure out how to do it. And then I realized that we travel anyway. And I was forgetting where I had gone and what I had eaten. And, this was a digital diary of and I do have a blog, but that came later.
Right.
But this was a nice digital diary. So every time somebody asked me, and I get a lot of questions because of my travels, like where do you go here, what do you do here? And then this was a good way to look back and it's like flipping a diary and saying, oh yeah, this is the place, I can look at my highlights and say, oh, here I went and ate here, check this place out, or things like that. So that's how my social media, I started posting a lot more on social media. And
Yeah.
in the process, if you go back to my old photographs and things, like it's terrible. But now I'm learning about, how to be a lot more intentional about photographs, getting a good picture, getting light. I'm learning editing. I've learned Lightroom. I've
Mhm.
learned Photoshop.
Right.
So yeah, learning to operate a camera, manual, the focus, and things like that. It's been a great learning experience. There have been downtimes, trust me. Oh my God,
Right.
sometimes social media can be nerve-wracking
Mhm.
and frustrating because, I've wanted to grow, and growth hasn't been the way I thought it would be. Although I thought, oh, I'm traveling so much, so people should find it interesting. And I seem to
Right.
give a lot of tips and things but it doesn't work that way. It
Yeah.
doesn't. So it's frustrating. But on the flip side, I've learned a lot. And that's what I take away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, because content creation is interesting because it's like unlike other work where you have like a following and you interact directly with your following, right? Whether that's through comments or such. And it's a very skilled job. So I guess I meant to ask, like, is this something you do completely on your own from all the editing, from all the maybe even storyboarding, or just like how you kind of create the shots, the angles, the tips, the captions? I read through some of them. Is it all you, or like do you have a team that helps you, you know?
Hell no, no team. It's all me.
Wow.
It's all me. So, 9 to 5 at Rice, 5 to 9 Instagram.
Right. Because yeah,
Instagram, Lightroom, Canva, uh, InShot, not so much InShot, but I use what is the other app? The app I use a lot is not InShot. I keep CapCut. Cap,
oh, right, right.
yes, I use a lot of CapCut. I mean, sometimes I get inspiration, when I look at CapCut. So,
I mean, I've looked through your social media before and it looked great. I saw a bunch of cool videos about like where to eat. I saw like I think you showed me one like where it's like, oh, even if you're solo traveling, you can still get like quality photos through services. So, I mean, they were really well put together, and that's why I thought, a lot of people who are like professional social media influencers and stuff, they have teams to like help them put
Mm.
together this content. But it's amazing that, you kind of built these skills on your own, or you put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, my photographer is my husband. So, yeah, when he's with me, he's the one. So it did take some, learning, because initially and that's what I was saying. I went back to my first Instagram like posts, and then it just comes up on sometimes so we were going through some of the pictures on our media, and I was like, I can't even, and I've been to almost all the places that influencers post about.
Right, right.
And so I was like, okay, let's see if I can pull out stuff from that time to post. And not a single picture can be used because the angles, like, I was like, what are you focusing on here? I don't know. It's just the background is so like not in focus. I mean,
Mhm.
when I mean focus, yes, it's in focus, but the angle is not right. So
Right.
I can see how much we've grown.
Mhm.
And that is not something I just learned like that, but it's watching others, right? Watching all these other creators do. So then I use Pinterest a lot when I go, and my girlfriends make fun of me all the time because when I go, when and we try to take at least one girls trip every year,
Mm.
and I will come with a storyboard. I
Yeah.
will come with, okay, girls, I need you to like, and I'll have a Pinterest board of
Mhm.
what the poses are like and how we should all pose, what we should do. They'll be like, okay, you tell us where we're taking that's my job.
Yeah. I guess I meant to ask as well, like, there's so much work you put into, maintaining your social media, designing, brainstorming, coming up with these ideas. But at the same time, I guess the problem of being like self-employed in that aspect is like there is no end to what you can do, right? And I know you've joked about, being 9 to 5 at Rice and then 5 to 9. But do you set yourself like a work-life balance when you're at home? Like, okay, no more social media for, past like 11 o'clock, like no more working on
9 o'clock. 9 o'clock is my cutoff time. There's
Okay,
no
so you do
social
have
media at 9. Yes, 9 is when I go up to my bedroom. I read my book before I go to sleep, and
mhm,
I try to go to sleep at 10. So
right,
and then weekends are, I mean, I will maybe post some stories or something and maybe prepare my post for the next week,
right,
whatever two posts or whatever I do. But beyond that, yeah, and it's like morning when I'm with my coffee or something, I'll spend some
mhm,
time. Then the rest of the day, I don't do much on social media
right,
until after work.
mhm,
So yes, I set myself limits like that. I don't set timers on it
right,
like my daughter does. She has a timer because
mhm,
I guess they'll go down that rabbit hole. So,
yeah,
but with that said, there's a lot of other things that I've had to give up because of this, right?
right,
And there's evening, Jane and I we like to watch shows. We're big movie buffs. I mean, Ajay is a huge cinephile. He, during his PhD days, has watched a movie a day.
wow,
Yes, he would come back
wow,
from work at 11 p.m. and watch a movie and then go to bed.
mhm,
So he has seen so many movies in his life, and
mhm,
he can stay up at any time of day or night to watch a movie.
yeah,
So we like watching our shows. So, after dinner, we will watch something.
mhm,
And then during that time, obviously, I'm not with my
right.
social medias,
I
so
guess
I do.
a follow-up question that I had kind of planned is, like as a mother who uses social media, my parents, I don't think they even know what Instagram is, if I'm being honest with you. But like I guess, how given, given that content creators in today's society have such a large influence on people who use, social media, as a mother and a content creator, how do you feel about like the role of social media, um, in like, especially, having children who might be using social media, what do you think like the role is? Because there's both goods and bads, right?
I think more bad than good, especially when you're growing up, I think, because the foundation has not been set, right? You're still very influenced by everything you see. At
Hmm.
my age, I take everything with a pinch of salt,
Right.
right? So I'm not, I know some of those pictures that you're showing me. It's nothing like that. I've seen it all. Like, so there's a certain amount of that I can take in. But I think for the youngsters, it's really, really hard.
Hmm.
Uh, they're influenced so much. They grow up with a lot of body image issues.
Right.
I think all in all, it has not, it colors the world so differently.
Hmm.
And if you're not ready for that, and children are influenced very easily by what they see around them, right?
Hmm.
I don't think it's a good influence for sure. It's not. I mean, that's what I see a lot. Even though I say I'm a seasoned, I have so much thing, but I see so many videos of people, women now, my age, right,
Hmm.
doing Botox and all of that.
Right.
I initially I probably did not even look at it, but now I
Mhm.
probably like, that looks interesting. What's
Yeah.
that? I mean, it will automatically pique your interest.
Hmm.
And before long, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
So yeah,
No.
not too happy. I think it's a hard time for kids growing up.
Mhm.
But you can't keep them away from it.
Right.
As a parent, if I did that, they do it anyway.
Yeah.
They do it behind my back.
Hmm.
So, if your mom or your dad told you not to do something, 9 times out of 10, you're going to do it anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's very little control. You can set the foundation
Mhm.
for them, and then, within reason, with controls, maybe try to reason with them, but beyond that, you can't keep it. I mean, I think that's the generation of today, and going
Mhm.
forward with AI and everything, it's going to be a part of your life.
Yeah.
We just need to be careful and tell the children how to use it well
Mhm.
and hope that they understand at some point.
Right. This transitions kind of perfectly into the next segment of kind of family and personal life. I actually meant to ask you, how have you been kind of parenting, well, I guess parented your children? Are there any specific values that you want to pass on to them? I know we talked about values that your parents passed on to you earlier, but is there anything you want to really instill in your children? Any like expectations you had for them, and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that's very important is being honest,
Mhm.
and to give whatever you do, give it your best shot, not give up easily. I don't like when they put up their hands very quickly. I like them to try their level best at everything, whatever they do. And then I think I want them to treat other people the way they treat themselves, compassion and be kind. Kindness is very important. I think that they should. Um, I also want them to be educated. I think education is very important. I know there are people who are educated and can still be not very nice people, but
Mhm.
I think, in order to have a good life, when I say good life, a comfortable, material comfort I'm talking about, right? I think education will get you somewhere there, I mean, because at the end of the day, if you don't have to worry about food, shelter, and clothing, right, you can focus on other things in life and enrich your life. If
Yeah.
you're constantly battling for food, shelter, and clothing, then that becomes the focus of your life, and it's a lot harder, right? So
Mhm.
education will, if nothing, if you, it will give you that opportunity to have that.
Right.
And I've always emphasized in our family, education is very important,
Mhm.
um, and also, be proud of where you are from, and not be afraid to speak your mind. And I've never put any limits on my kids, being women or anything like that. I want them to um, reach their full potential. I always keep telling them to reach their full potential and not let anything or anybody be in their way. So those are some of the things that and humility is also kind of important.
Yeah.
We don't like them touting their own horns,
Mhm.
or telling, we try to keep it subtle. And I tell them that, we are where we are, not so much because of everything that we have done, but part of it is also where we were. We were given the right opportunities, and not of our own making. Some of it is our own making. We have made our own,
Mhm.
we've made our own beds, yes, but a lot of it is also you were lucky to be, and always be grateful for that. Always be grateful to where you are in life, because not everybody's given that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, those are all great points. And I think circling back to the education thing, what I was thinking about was like beyond, education at a good school or, in the classroom. I think you've been a wonderful mother in the way of like exposing them to travel and being able to explore new cultural and culinary opportunities. I guess I kind of want to ask one last final question about like the traveling
Sure.
stuff. Growing up, I know you talked about like the sabbaticals, taking them, to other countries, but what about more short term? Like how often would you say your family would go on vacations together? And maybe now that like your children are all grown up and doing their own thing, do you and your husband still go on vacations here and there, even if he doesn't have a sabbatical, even if it's just for like a week, like spring break or something like that?
Yes, we go very often, whenever we get an opportunity. My last vacation was not vacation. I mean, I worked from Spain for end of June. I mean,
I saw.
February, end
Mhm.
of February. In April, we are going to Panama City for the weekend.
Mm,
And then in May, we have some trip. And then again, June, July would probably, go for some more time. Yes, and last week we went to Austin over the weekend for South by Southwest, the film festival,
mm,
during spring break.
yeah.
Yeah, I went with my younger daughter and her boyfriend,
Mm,
who is a script writer.
mm,
So yeah,
wow. I,
so we
I guess, do you have any advice for people who want to get into traveling, whether that's like making the time or being cost effective or even just like planning in advance, or what sorts of things to look for in new places when you don't really know what to look for?
So, I mean, I'd say start with your backyard, right? I mean, when you start looking at your backyard, you'll realize during COVID, we realized that there were so many places around Houston that we hadn't seen, which has so much to offer. So you start small, right? Looking around you, and then you start exploring. So that will also keep the cost down, right?
Right.
If you don't if you want to travel as a student, look
Hmm.
around you. There are so many things, there are so many places. If you're into hiking, there are so many places you could go. In Texas itself, you can go up to Big Bend.
Right.
It's a 6 7 hour drive, but
Mm,
great place, beautiful, wonderful hikes around there. And you can go to Arkansas, you can go to Ozark. There's so many places around here that you
mm,
can, so you can start small around your backyard. And then, as your appetite, you start realizing what it is you like. You like beaches, then you can go start at Galveston. It's not the greatest beach, but
mm,
you start there, right? And then you explore a little bit more based on your budget, and then you
yeah.
understand what your appetite is, where you want to go, where you'd like to go.
Mm,
And then, around here, Mexico is a great destination, so much cheaper than here. Can you give me a second,
yeah.
Sam? Just
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
second. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and Pinterest is great for finding out, options, itineraries. Again, if you have some, if you're on social media, then the kind of people, some people who whose content you like, you can follow and see what they post about. If you feel that you can identify with them and their mode of travel, there are so many people who post, you know, depending on what your appetite is,
Hmm.
you can always consume that kind of content and look for it there. There's these days with Google, with social media, that's the plus point of social media, is you can find whatever your appetite is, right? So, like I said, when I was in Europe and we were postdoc salary, we were doing the student travel.
Hmm.
So we weren't flying everywhere. We were taking a bus.
Yeah.
So you can still do that, right? And in the US also, I mean, there are buses. There are buses, there are trains. It might take you longer, but then you enjoy a different view, driving. I mean, people drive places here, right? So it's a totally different way of travel, but it's, I think, whatever your budget, whatever your appetite, there's something for everyone.
Mm,
And we are so lucky being in the US. The national parks in the US are
yeah.
just incredibly, the beauty around us, natural beauty around us is amazing.
Mhm.
And then if you want some colonial culture and everything, just start looking south, Mexico City is great. Oaxaca, San Miguel de Allende is really great. You can go down to Guatemala. We went to Antigua. Sí, sí, sí. Okay, okay. Antigua is great. We were there, and now I'm hearing Panama City is great, so we're going there. So I'll know a
Mhm.
little bit more. But I've heard old Panama City is beautiful. So there's so many things, so many places that one can go and,
Yeah.
explore. Asia is fantastic, but of course, it's a long plane ride. But
Right.
once, if you can get a cheap ticket, Asia will be great. There are lots of countries that are still very cheap.
Mhm. Yeah, that's all wonderful advice. And I guess then now, taking traveling off the table, what are some hobbies that you enjoy? I know you mentioned your husband loves films, so you watch them a lot with him.
Yes.
But what are some other
Yes.
hobbies that you like to do in the time that you are home, you know?
So I mean, I'm, I told you, I believe in self-care. I like to work out. I like to do yoga. I
Mm,
do yoga regularly. So that's, we like to come to Rice sometimes and work out in the gym. I like to um, help my friends or, in whatever, sometimes we like to help out in these kind of soup kitchens or things like that, and also there are some of these communities that we are part of that,
mm,
we help out, fundraiser or whatever it is that they need. I like to do that. But I love watching movies and shows, also TV shows. I
mm.
like reading. I like reading a lot. So that's one of my hobbies. I I like cooking, but in moderation.
Yeah. Um, yeah, then I guess kind of wrapping up, I have a few questions that I like to ask all my interviewees. Um, I guess the first question would be how it's these are kind of more about your identity and your
Mhm.
perspective. So my first question would be how do you identify yourself ethnically? You know, after all this travel, all of your experiences, ultimately, what would you identify yourself as, ethnically?
A global citizen.
Bubbles.
Yeah. I can't say I am. I mean, I have some Indianness in me. I have some European influences. And then, of course, I have some American influences too. So at this point, I think I'm more, maybe a little more confused than.
I like
Yes.
that answer. Then I guess when and where do you feel most at home?
Country-wise, or
I guess it doesn't specify, so whatever you feel like, whatever you make of the question.
so country-wise, I am most at home in India.
Mm,
Um, I feel like my full potential. Like I know I grow up here, so I know like these are things I can say, I can't say. And to be honest, in today's world here, I am very guarded in my speech, and so that makes me uncomfortable, to some extent, that we have to constantly, it's not a bad thing per se, but it does put, I can't totally be honest, right? Like in some things you have to watch. I mean, you might hurt somebody or so that's that is a little bit, so it's not giving me complete create or complete freedom. Like I
mhm.
feel most free when I'm in India. I because that's where I grew up.
Right. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's like your
Yeah.
home, home.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then I guess what do you feel most proud of? I know this one is very open, but what are you most proud of, I guess?
Uh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Um, Honestly, I don't know what to say. What I'm most proud of. I'm proud of, I think, my family.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's so many things you can talk about. I feel like this is a silly question, but I mean,
No, I think
you've done a lot in terms of traveling, living, adapting to so many different places, working so many different jobs, raising children the whole time. So I guess, yeah, there's really no one thing that you can really just put a finger on.
I think it's my family. I'm very proud of my family.
Hmm.
Yeah, like my kids, my husband. I'm just proud of who they are as individuals
Hmm.
more than anything else. These other things are just, I feel like, materialistic and, like I said, being at the right place at the right time has given us a lot to be.
Right.
But my family, the values that they have, the value system that they have,
Hmm.
uh, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of them for having that in today's world. And yeah, that's what I'm most proud of, actually.
Okay. That's great. I guess then I've asked most of the questions that I wanted to, or they were all kind of covered throughout the interview.
Mhm.
I guess, is there anything you would like to add that we have not covered yet or touched on? Um, yeah.
I I think I pretty much summarized my whole life for you in whatever little time. I mean,
Mhm.
there will be always some anecdotes or episodes or something that, we always, but I think, for the most part, maybe the immigration, but the way we immigrated, I told you, right?
Right,
How
right.
we came here. And yeah, by the way, we are US citizens now. At some point
Oh.
we did get our citizenship, yeah. And one of the reasons why we got it is also the ability and ease to travel.
Mm. I was curious. I was gonna ask because you said your firstborn was born in France. So are they
Yes.
technically a French citizen as
No,
well?
so they don't have naturalized citizenship in France,
Oh,
but
okay.
if she ever wanted citizenship in France, she can, I think, go live there for 5 years and
Uh-huh.
serve or something, and then ask for it. She
Uh,
she has the ability to ask, but
mhm.
she'd have to jump through some hoops first.
So was she an Indian citizen when she was born then?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah,
that's
because I
right.
was trying to put it all together. I was like, wow,
Yes.
like,
Yeah, she was Indian, and then when we got naturalized, she also got naturalized. My
uh,
other one was born here in upstate New
right,
York. She's a
right.
naturalized American, yes. So now
Wow,
we're all American.
that is so cool. Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing. I know it's really hard to squeeze your whole life into an hour and a half of time,
Oh,
but
no,
I
that
really appreciate so much of the information and insight that you provided. I can end the recording right now, and then
okay.